Just win and you're in. It's no longer just an SEC bumper sticker. It can now be a Big 12 bumper sticker. Yes, OU fans are going to tell you a bunch of other fun jazz to go along with it. And that's fine. Just win.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you very much for stopping by to make this your first listen. You know, we're available on every single podcasting platform, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on Twitter at AllDayOState. Today, we are partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more right now with FanDuel. With new customers getting $150 back in bonus bets, you need to get hooked up today with FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started now. So you're going to hear more and more as time goes on, as long as it doesn't help OU, aka you're hearing now, that now that the Big 12 has finally come out to clarify its rule on the tiebreaker situation, because they did add some terminology like, what if, then revert to option 2 type scenario, but they didn't really say what the if was in the original contract. So they had to come out and just basically tell people that, it's common sense, but if the team in question, that just so happens this year to be Oklahoma State, but if that team were to be undefeated against the next two teams, then the tiebreaker is what it is, right? There doesn't need to be a three-way tiebreaker. If there's a three-way tie and one of the three teams is undefeated against the other teams. But of course, your favorite OU brethren down the road is going to tell you that this is a way to make sure that OU gets kept out of the Big 12 title game, unless it benefited them, right? If they would have been undefeated against the other teams, then there's not really the wonkiness of the same common opponents. Then they'd be fine with this. And then they would also be saying, with all of their doctors and all of their lawyers and all of the overly educated people, that, well, of course, it's going to be the next place team that has a better winning numbers over the other two teams. Yeah. But because Oklahoma State is the team sitting in this position with logic, maybe now no longer needs to be part of the scenario here. But thank goodness we took care of business against the teams that are right there, right? The loss to UCF, it undoubtedly is going to hurt, not only in the eyes of perception nationally, but even in the Big 12. No matter what happens now, the Big 12 winner is going to look a little bit more diminished. Even if the crazy happens, and let's say Texas wins out, and Texas is, one of the teams that's automatically basically in the daggone thing, and whomever the next team is that gets in beats them, then it's going to make, again, more of a dumbing down effect of the conference. But let's not pretend that if OU or Kansas State or even KU was the team that just so happened to be 2-0 against the other two teams, that they wouldn't be elated. that they wouldn't be screaming from the top of buildings right now like, duh, of course, we beat the other two teams. And that's what you should do as a Cowboy fan, because that's what I'm going to be doing. Because at the end of the day, it's about capitalization, right? I mean, you want to continue capitalization because it could mean more. So the years and the times and the instances where it can mean more, then yeah, sure. And when you do get in those scenarios, you want to make sure you capitalize as much as physically possible, of course. But we're not getting into the Final Four. It's not happening. But we could still hoist a Big 12 title trophy. And, is everyone going to talk about the UCF loss to some degree? Yes. But at the end of the day, if we have a trophy in the trophy cases at Boone Pickens Stadium for all the recruits to see and all of their families to see on the recruiting trips in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, is anybody still going to be talking about the team that got dusted by UCF? No. People will likely bring up the team that got dusted by South Alabama and then went on a run that culminated with the Big 12 championship, right? That is the story here, all right? and that's precisely what it should be, though. We have an opportunity to still win a Big 12 championship. Not only that, thanks to the common sense that we've been able to get most recently from the Big 12 Conference, that, there is no extra tiebreaker needed when one team is 2-0 against the other two teams, and the other two teams are 1-1 against each other. That team gets in. This time, that team is us. We are used to the Thayer Evans Sports Illustrated situations, and then followed it up by like the basketball NCAA Bill Self. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry, I meant Mike Boynton situation, right? Okay, that was a little nice little stab, little jab stab. Call it what you call it. But we're in this position. We are that team that just so happens to be in this position, right? If the other two teams were teams that OU were undefeated against, they would be having the same a little bit of elation because they want this one on the way out. They did. They definitely wanted this one on the way out. And if any OU fan tries to tell you at the end of the year that it never really mattered because they were leaving anyways, that's not true. It would have mattered more if they would have won it, because then they could have laughed and said, see you on the way out. Same with Texas. Somebody has to not give Texas that same validation that every OU fan was looking forward to having. And now they can't. Unless we drop another dud, right? We got the dud. I mean, technically, we got 2 duds out of the way. Does that mean we've reached our quota on duds for the season and we won't get any more? It's a possibility. This wasn't Murderer's Row to begin with, but we still tripped up. So we can't afford any more tripping up. We got to take care of business against Houston. And, we know Houston has some people that we do, in fact, have to pay attention to. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, I have to remind you all that you cannot be the MVP of anything if you cannot get there. eBay Motors has the passion, the drive, and the patience to bring home the winning trophy and help you keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep it up to peak performance. Everything from roof racks to superchargers, exhaust kits, LED light kits, and more. At eBay Motors, they've got you covered with over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. That's the idea here. With all the parts that you need, all the prices you want, it's very easy to turn your rig into the MVP today. Go to ebaymotors.com. Keep your ride or die alive. Again, go to ebaymotors.com today. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. That's pretty important that you get going now. Also important that we get the W, or none of this being in the catbird seat, or having the 2-0 record over Oklahoma and Kansas State in the next head-to-head scenario. It doesn't matter if you don't get the W. I think we all know that it would be a lot easier to do so with Ollie Gordon back in the fold. It was smart for us to pull Ollie Gordon when we did. I'm sure, it hurt overall statistically. It definitely hurt our chances, but let's face it, our chances were gone pretty early, because when you get beat up a bit and you don't really have a backup or have a plan in place to be ready for the backup, or your rain equipment even ready, it's typically a decent indication on how the day might go. And that's exactly what happened. But if we got the duds out of the way and the stud got his bad game out of the way, then I think everybody kind of likes our chances, because being on the road at Houston, from a recruiting area of conversation, it has a lot of implications. We've had a lot of guys on hand to be a part of some pretty good games, thankfully. But this one, it's got a little bit of a different flavor because of how many underclassmen are around that area that will be at this game. Because if Houston can, catch lightning in a bottle per se, and do the same thing, or rain in a bottle, if you will, that UCF was able to do, it's going to help them in recruiting for sure. Right. And they want to be able to prop this one up. It's not like we're running in and getting a bunch of people from Florida. So yeah, that loss is always going to hurt. But at the end of the day, if you end up playing for a Big 12 title, or actually winning a Big 12 title, that'll be more of what the conversation is, catered to. So at the end of the day, you win this game, and it helps you get a lot of eyeballs on Oklahoma State, in the state of Houston, underclassmen, and you don't give Houston that little extra ammo in the can, be like, hey, we just beat Oklahoma State, right? So there's a lot of reasons why you should come here instead of entertain the idea of going to Oklahoma State, yada, 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 that type of thing. You just want to squash that before it gets started, because Houston will have some capabilities eventually to do some things in the recruiting realm. I think we all know that. So we don't need to give them any jump start. We don't need to do them any favors or make life any easier on them in that department. A win here goes a long way. Getting Ollie Gordon back on track definitely is going to go a long way as well. And I'm not just focused in on Ollie. If Ollie's got a little bit of a nagging injury, and let's say that it's not, looking like the greatest prognosis in the world, I don't think anybody has any problem who puts up good running numbers, whether it be Jed Nixon or Elijah Collins or Ollie Gordon. I mean, if Alan Bowman could find a way to crawl daddy himself for 120, 130 yards, nobody would be mad about it. I would also like to see the betting man on that ticket. Who made that bet that Alan Bowman goes over 120? But anywho, getting Ollie Gordon back on track it's easier said than done in this conference. But I think you'd be ridiculous not to think that the weather didn't have at least some hand in this. I'm not saying that's what led to the loss, but it definitely it plays a part. Okay. Houston should be a little bit of a different animal. And if it is a rainy day, as long as we have our rain equipment, right there ready to rock and roll, it should allow all of us as a team to be even more prepared on the field as well. But realistically, the offensive line has been the most impressive group more or less all year. I do think that for the little number of catches or opportunities that some of the wide receivers have received, I think it's fair to give them some extra love. But offensive line, it's been a major improvement from a position and a guy in Coach Dickey that has shown us not to get it done thus far. And now he's thankfully been able to take this season and show us a little bit more why he was a good hire from Kansas State. If you give him a little bit more of his bread and butter, which is clearly running the football, and some people that are capable of, taking advantage, like our running backs, then he could do some work, and he's been able to do that. So with just the locker room, right, and the buy-in and the amount of understandable frustration they're going to have with this last game, I don't see us folding here, right? I could definitely see us going to Houston and taking care of business. But Houston already got screwed over by Texas, even though they should have won that game. That game took a lot out of them, right? It took a lot of their sales down. So let's not let that happen because this is a game we should win. And I think that Ollie can get back on track primarily because of this offensive line. They haven't really had a lot of letdown until South Florida or Central Florida. Sorry. I want to make sure to get that distinguished jacked up or I'll get in a lot of trouble. Right. You could find yourself in trouble if you don't go to FanDuel today and capitalize on your potential to make $1 bills. Score right now with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Our new customers are getting $150 back in bonus bets off of any $5 money line. Again, that is $150 back in bonus bets if your team wins off of just a $5 holler. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's literally not a better time for you to get in on the action. There's everything to pick from player props to over-unders, conference champions, Heisman Trophy, Super Bowl winners, and more. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today and kick off this NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. I just alluded to a little bit of why capitalization still has a little ways to go for us. Not just because, Houston is capable. They are. But also just because in general, the Big 12 has been absolutely crazy. Last year, we were crazy with a team that was, viewed from a talent pool perspective as able to compete. And what they did to Michigan, I think, definitely proves that to a decent level of a degree, because that conversation between the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the Big 12, it is different with, I mean, the Big 10 stealing signs over at Michigan and still losing to TCU, right? Okay. That proved we've got some talent in this conference. And part of that talent is the parity. Not to say that the SEC doesn't have talented guys, but when you look at the Big 12 parity, it's a little bit different. And it's not just because you get beat up on so much. Is it just the week to week to week nature that you have to be healthy, be prepared, see physically ready, mentally ready, and to just do that week after week after week? It is different. The SEC and the Big 10, they get games in between where they legitimately can just chill, just relax, have the starters out by halftime. You're not going to get that in this conference. I think it's a good thing to some degree as a fan of college football, of course, as a fan of the Big 12. Yes, of course. As a fan of particular schools, man, not really, not so much. Having a big, tie for second place, it's kind of fun, but at the same time, it's stressful, right? I think all of us would prefer to be in the catbird seat. But if you look at Texas, they've been in the catbird seat and they just keep barely winning games. Sometimes to win championships, that's what you need to have happen. I mean, you're going to need some of the close games to come your way. A couple extra bounces, a couple extra doinks or dinks off of the field goal posts or not can sway a large portion of how the season is viewed. Because the overall record's not always indicative of how every game played out. But again, perception does in fact matter. And the perception will be, if you hold the title at the end of this season, that you're Big 12 champions. That capitalization. Yes, you would like more, right? But sometimes you got to deal with the hand that you're dealt. And the hand that we've been dealt dictates right now that a Big 12 championship is still a possibility. Going to the Final Four is not. And if you're Texas, I mean, yes, theoretically, playing in the Final Four is still very possible for you. But that makes it even sweeter for us. If it's one of us or even K-State, that knocks that whole thing out of whack. It would be pretty poetic justice for somebody. I just hope that somebody is in fact us. Plus our recent success over the last 11, 12 years over Texas. I mean, that does give you a little bit of an extra warm and fuzzy feeling. All right. It's not all warm and fuzzy, but it's a little extra. All right, y'all. We'll get to talk a little bit more about Houston tomorrow. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in once again to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. God bless. Go Pokes. As always, you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. All righty, y'all. I'll see you tomorrow. Later, taters.